Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're gearing up for the Florida General Contractor exam, or honestly, even if you're just trying to tighten up your back office operations, you already know that managing administrative duties can feel like navigating an absolute maze. So today, we're going to break down the complex rules of business and finance together, turning them into clear, easy-to-remember concepts.
Okay, let's dive into this. 26%. This single domain, managing administrative duties, makes up a massive quarter of your entire business and finance exam. You literally cannot pass the 6.5-hour test without conquering this section. Because, it's not just about building physical structures, it's about building a compliant, profitable business. We are going to lock in on the exact formulas, the deadlines, and the legal frameworks that the state of Florida expects you to know inside and out.
To do that, we've got a really clear blueprint that maps perfectly to the state's exam content. We'll be hitting direct costs versus overhead, allocating payroll taxes, the AIA contract hierarchy, administering contract changes, and procurement and inventory rules. Let's keep our mental compartments crystal clear and get moving.
All right, Module 1, direct costs versus overhead.
Okay, separating the money tied directly to the job site from the money tied to your back office is, well, it's the absolute bedrock of construction accounting. But this is a classic binary trap where candidates constantly lose easy points. You've got to clearly distinguish between direct costs, which you might see referred to as cost of goods sold or COGS, and indirect costs, which is just your overhead. Direct costs are strictly tied to project execution. Basically, if you aren't building the building, you aren't spending this money. Think labor, physical materials, and subcontractor payments. On the flip side, overhead is what keeps the business lights on, even if you don't have a single active job on the books, which, let's be honest, is a pretty terrifying thought, right? But you still have to pay office rent, salaries for your office staff, general liability insurance, and communication costs like cell phones. Mixing these up in your accounting leads to real-world profit fade, and mixing them up on the exam, well, that leads to a failing score.
Moving right along to Module 2, allocating payroll taxes.
Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown is you need to know exactly who is legally responsible for paying which tax. Visually lock in on this. On the top, we have FICA, which stands for the Federal Insurance Contributions Act, and that covers Social Security and Medicare. This is a shared burden. It's split between the employer and the employee. But look at the bottom. FUTA and SUTA. That's federal and state unemployment taxes. This burden falls completely on the employer. No sharing there.
So, the absolutely crucial point here. Burn this little mnemonic into your memory. FICA is shared. The employer pays for unemployment. Seriously, just say it out loud a few times right now. Knowing this distinction isn't just some hurdle you have to jump over for the exam. A quick word of advice. Misclassifying these taxes or failing to pay them properly can trigger severe Department of Revenue penalties that could literally bankrupt you in the real world. So keep that quote in your back pocket for sure.
Up next, Module 3, the AIA contract hierarchy.
So, transitioning from the math of the back office to the legal paperwork of the job site. And this brilliantly illustrates the hierarchy we're dealing with. Notice how the A201 document sits right there at the top of the pyramid. It acts as the absolute foundation of the project, establishing the core rules of the game. From there, those rules flow downwards to influence the A701 instructions to bidders and the A401 contractor-subcontractor agreement. It's called flow-down clauses. It basically means the subcontractor is bound to you, the contractor, by the exact same rules and conditions that you are bound to the owner.
Let's quickly break down the specific purpose of each of these, because you'll definitely be tabbing these in your reference books. The A201 is the keystone. It's the general conditions of the contract for construction, and it defines the overarching rights and responsibilities of the owner, the contractor, and the architect. And remember, the architect acts as the project referee and the owner's representative here. Next up is the A401. That's the direct agreement between you, the general contractor, and your subcontractors. Finally, the A701 provides the strict instructions and procedures for competitive bidding. Knowing exactly which book to crack open when a test question asks about bidding rules versus subrelations is going to save you massive amounts of time.
That brings us to Module 4, administering contract changes. Because let's face it, has any project in the history of construction ever gone exactly according to the original plans? No way. So imagine this scenario. What happens when the owner wants to add a completely new wing to the building mid-project, but you and the owner absolutely cannot agree on a price for that new work? What do? Do you stop working? Do you pack up your tools and head home?
The exam heavily tests your knowledge of the exact legal mechanisms used to handle these kinds of site disagreements without actually breaching the contract.
Here's the breakdown you need to know. A change order, or CO, is a beautiful thing. It means everyone gets along and agrees. The owner, the contractor, and the architect all sign off. The adjustment in price and the adjustment in time are totally agreed upon before the work even starts. But look at the other side, the Construction Change Directive, or CCD. This is the answer to that tricky scenario we just talked about. If you can't agree on a price, a CCD requires only two signatures, the owner and the architect. It's basically a unilateral order telling you, the contractor, to do the work right now so the project doesn't stall and you'll figure out the exact pricing and time adjustments later. So remember, 3 signatures for a CO, 2 signatures for a CCD.
And wait, there's a third, very specific type of change to clarify here. A minor change in the work. This is issued by the architect alone. They do not need the owner's signature, and they definitely don't need yours. Why? Because legally, a minor change has absolutely no cost impact and no time impact. Think of it like a simple clarification to a paint color or fixing a tiny inconsistency in the drawings. The golden rule for the exam on this one is simple. If a change affects your cost or your timeline in literally any way whatsoever, it simply cannot be considered a minor change.
Finally, we arrive at Module 5, Procurement and Inventory Rules.
For our last focus on the physical mechanics and legalities of managing materials, let's fire through 3 rapid-fire, highly testable definitions you need to instantly recognize on test day. First, FIFO stands for first in, first out. It is the standard assumption for inventory system operations. It just means you use or sell your oldest materials first. Next up, the UCC, or Uniform Commercial Code. This is the massive set of laws that governs the fundamentals of commercial transactions and the sale of goods across state lines. Lastly, the Statute of Frauds. In the context of business and finance, this is the legal doctrine dictating that certain types of contracts absolutely must be in writing to be legally enforceable. Sorry, but a handshake just won't cut it.
So, we've walked through the binary traps of accounting, the strict rules of payroll taxes, the flow-down hierarchy of AIA documents, how to navigate those messy change orders, and the bedrock of procurement law. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this provocative question. Would your current business practices survive a DBPR audit or a state exam right now? The knowledge we've structured here isn't just a hurdle for passing a test. It is the essential administrative toolkit required to run a highly successful, fully compliant contracting business in Florida. Apply these principles to your study materials immediately, get your books tabbed up correctly, and you are going to be in a fantastic position to succeed. Keep studying hard and best of luck.